I never planned to expose Barbara Wilson's carefully constructed lie at her own anniversary party. But sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of timing. The crystal chandeliers in her ballroom cast elegant shadows across the faces of Hartford's elite as they celebrated my mother-in-law's 30 years of building her real estate empire from nothing. If only they knew. "Amanda, darling, you're hovering by the appetizers again." Barbara's voice cut through the ambient chatter, dripping with fake concern. "Those canapes are for the guests, dear. Besides," she patted my stomach with perfectly manicured fingers, "that assistant salary of yours can't afford extra trips to the tailor." I forced a smile, remembering my promise to David that I wouldn't ruin his parents' anniversary celebration. My husband of 2 years still didn't understand why his mother treated me like something stuck to the bottom of her Louboutins. But I knew. Barbara Wilson had spent 3 decades crafting her image as Hartford's self-made real estate queen, and having a daughter-in-law who actually worked in corporate finance threatened her narrative. "I brought some business cards," I said quietly, reaching into my clutch. "I actually got promoted last month to senior financial analyst." Barbara's face twisted into something ugly before smoothing back into her hostess mask. In one fluid motion, she snatched the cards from my hand and tore them into tiny pieces, letting them flutter to the marble floor like expensive confetti. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me," she trilled, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. "But really, Amanda, this is hardly the place to network. We're celebrating real success tonight, not your little office job." I watched my name scatter across the floor, each piece a reminder of every slight, every dismissive comment, every time Barbara had made sure I knew I wasn't good enough for her precious son, or her precious family name. "Mother." David appeared beside me, finally noticing the commotion. "What are you doing?" "Teaching your wife about appropriate party etiquette." Barbara smiled, touching her signature pearl necklace. The one she never failed to mention was worth more than my yearly salary. "Someone has to." I felt David tense beside me, caught once again between his wife and the mother who'd controlled him with guilt and family obligation his entire life. Before he could speak, Barbara's voice rang out across the ballroom. "Everyone, gather round. It's time for my anniversary speech." She glided to the center of the room, commanding attention like she'd done for 30 years. "When I started Wilson Real Estate, I had nothing but determination and vision. I tuned out the familiar story, how she'd built her company from scratch, how she'd never taken handouts, how she earned every property in her portfolio through grit and genius. I'd heard it all before, but tonight was different. Tonight, the weight of the truth sat heavy in my designer clutch, wrapped in a thick manila envelope. "Thanks to my success," Barbara continued, "I provided generously for my family. Well, most of my family." Her eyes found me in the crowd. "Some people prefer to struggle independently rather than accept help from their betters. Isn't that right, Amanda?" The crowd tittered politely. David's hand found mine, squeezing in silent apology. But I was done apologizing, done hiding, done protecting Barbara Wilson's carefully constructed house of cards. "Actually, Barbara," my voice carried clearly across the sudden silence, "I've been meaning to discuss business with you." "Amanda?" David whispered, "Maybe not now." But I was already walking forward, manila envelope in hand. Barbara's eyes narrowed at my approach, her perfect smile never wavering. "This is hardly the time for your little office matters," she dismissed, turning back to her audience. "Oh, but it is." I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately. "You see, I've been trying to tell you for months. About my work, about my recent acquisition of certain assets." Barbara's smile froze as I pulled out the first document. "I'm not just a senior financial analyst, Barbara. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Capital Partners. We specialize in real estate investment and acquisition." The crowd murmured. Barbara's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. "And 6 months ago," I continued, my voice steady despite my pounding heart, "Phoenix acquired controlling interest in Wilson Real Estate's mortgage holdings. All of them." The champagne glass slipped from Barbara's fingers, shattering on the marble floor in perfect synchronization with her carefully constructed facade. Her face drained of color as I held up the mortgage documents bearing my signature, not as David's wife or Barbara's daughter-in-law, but as the owner of the company that now controlled every property in her portfolio. "So you see, Barbara," I said softly, watching 30 years of lies crumble in her eyes, We should probably discuss appropriate business etiquette. After all, you work for me now." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. David stood frozen, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. And Barbara? Barbara Wilson, the queen of Hartford real estate, the woman who had spent 2 years treating me like dirt beneath her feet, finally saw me clearly. But this wasn't just about revenge. The documents in my hands held more secrets than just property deeds, secrets that would make this anniversary party one the Wilson family would never forget. The silence in Barbara's pristine office felt heavier than the thick stack of documents I'd placed on her mahogany desk. It had been 3 days since the anniversary party, 3 days of unanswered calls from David and endless speculation in Hartford's social circles. "This is impossible," Barbara muttered, flipping through the papers with trembling hands. Her perfect French manicure, usually so immaculate, was chipped at the edges. These properties, the mortgages, they were all paid off years ago. I leaned back in the leather chair across from her desk, her throne, as the family called it. "Were they, Barbara? Or is that just another story you've been telling?" She looked up sharply, the familiar hatred in her eyes now tinged with fear. "You conniving little." "Careful." I cut her off. "That's no way to talk to your new employer." The door opened and David walked in. He looked exhausted, his usually crisp suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Knowing him, he probably had. "Mom," he said quietly, "I've been reviewing the company books like Amanda suggested." He placed another folder on the desk. "Would you like to explain why there are 2 sets of accounting records?" Barbara's face went from pale to ashen. "Davy, darling, those are just tax fraud," I finished for her. "Systematic and deliberate tax fraud spanning the last 15 years. Along with some very creative accounting to hide the fact that Wilson Real Estate has been operating in the red for the past decade." "You're lying." Barbara stood up so quickly her chair crashed against the wall. "I built this company from nothing. Every property, every deal, was mortgaged to the hilt to maintain the illusion of success." I said calmly, "You've been robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking out new loans to cover old ones, all while playing the role of Hartford's real estate queen." David sank into the chair beside me, loosening his tie. "Why, Mom? We had a good business, a legitimate one. Why risk everything?" Barbara's perfectly painted lips trembled. "You don't understand. After your father died, the other developers thought they could push me out. A widow playing at business, they laughed at me. I had to show them, had to prove, that you were better than everyone else." I finished, "Even if it meant breaking the law, even if it meant treating your own family like pawns." "Family?" She laughed bitterly. "You're not family. You're just some middle-class nobody who seduced my son." "I'm the nobody who owns your mortgages," I corrected. "The nobody who could call in your loans tomorrow and watch your empire crumble. The nobody who has enough evidence of your fraud to send you to prison." David reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "Amanda's trying to help, Mom. Phoenix Capital Partners can restructure the debt, keep the company solvent. But there have to be changes." Barbara sank back into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 60 years. "Changes?" I pulled out another document, my final card. "Full disclosure of all financial irregularities, a new board of directors, and your immediate resignation." "You want my company?" Her voice cracked. "Everything I've built?" "No, Barbara. I want you to face reality. Your company is dying. Your reputation is built on lies. And your son—" I glanced at David, seeing the pain in his eyes. "Your son deserves better than being trapped in this web of deception." "Davy," she pleaded, reaching for him across the desk. "You can't let her do this. We're family." David stood slowly, straightening his spine. "Yes, Mom, we are family, which is why we're offering you a chance to fix this, legally, quietly, without scandal or charges. Under my management," I added, "with David as COO. We'll preserve the Wilson name, save the company, and keep you out of prison. All you have to do is step down." Barbara's hands went to her pearl necklace, her armor, her symbol of success. For a long moment, she stared out the window at the Hartford skyline she claimed to conquer. "If I refuse?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I stood gathering the documents. "Then tomorrow morning, these records go to the FBI, the IRS, and the Connecticut Real Estate Commission. Your choice." As I turned to leave, Barbara's voice stopped me. "You planned this, didn't you? All of it? The job at Phoenix, marrying my son. I looked back at her, seeing not the fearsome mother-in-law who tormented me, but a desperate woman who'd lost herself in her own lies. No, Barbara. I fell in love with David despite you, not because of you. Finding out about your fraud was just karmic justice. Amanda, David called softly. Give us a minute. I nodded, leaving mother and son alone to face the ruins of their family legacy. Through the door, I heard Barbara begin to sob, real tears this time, not the theatrical ones she used for manipulation. Standing in the elegant hallway of Wilson Real Estate, surrounded by photos of Barbara's success story, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep sadness for the family that had been twisted by lies and hope that maybe, just maybe, truth could set them free. But as I waited for David, my phone buzzed with a text that made my blood run cold. Barbara's web of deception ran deeper than even I had discovered, and tomorrow would bring revelations that would shake Hartford society to its core. The text message glowed ominously on my phone screen. Miss Carter, we found something in the offshore accounts. Mrs. Wilson wasn't just defrauding the government. She was laundering money for the Hartman family. My hands went cold. The Hartmans were Hartford's oldest criminal dynasty, masquerading as legitimate business owners. If Barbara had gotten involved with them. The office door opened and David emerged, looking drained. She's agreed to step down. Mom's signing the papers now. Before I could respond, the elevator doors pinged open. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their FBI badges glinting under the hallway lights. Mrs. Wilson, one called out. We need to speak with you immediately. Barbara appeared in the doorway, her face still streaked with tears. When she saw the agents, all color drained from her face. No, she whispered. They promised they wouldn't. Mom? David's voice sharpened. What's going on? The next hour passed in a blur of revelations. The FBI had been investigating the Hartman family's money laundering operation for years. Barbara, desperate to maintain her illusion of success, had agreed to help them clean their money through real estate transactions. In return, they'd helped her keep her financial house of cards standing. I had no choice, Barbara kept saying as the agents led her away. After the market crash in 08, I was going to lose everything. The Hartmans offered a solution. David stood at the window, watching his mother being escorted to a waiting car. Did you know about this? He asked quietly. I just found out, I answered truthfully. The money laundering wasn't in any of our records. The FBI investigation was completely separate. He turned to me, his eyes full of pain, and something else. Understanding. All those times she belittled you, treated you like you were beneath us. She was terrified you'd discover the truth. David. I touched his arm gently. We can still save the legitimate parts of the business. Your father's original properties, the honest investments. My father, he laughed bitterly. He probably knew. That's why he drank himself to death 5 years ago. He couldn't live with the shame. The next few weeks transformed Wilson Real Estate. Under Phoenix Capital's management, we untangled the web of illegal transactions, cooperated with federal investigators, and began rebuilding the company's reputation. David proved himself an exceptional COO. His integrity and business acumen helped restore client confidence. Barbara took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against the Hartmans in exchange for a reduced sentence. The day before she reported to prison, she asked to see me. I underestimated you, she said, sitting in the prison's visiting room. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple slacks and a sweater. Even her precious pearls were gone. I thought you were a threat to my status, my reputation. I never imagined you'd be our salvation. I didn't do it for you, Barbara. I know, she smiled sadly. You did it for David. You love him in a way I never understood, without conditions, without needing to control him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My grandmother's pearls. The real ones, not the fakes I've been wearing to keep up appearances. Give them to your daughter someday when you have one. Tell her, her voice cracked. Tell her to be better than me. 6 months later, David and I stood in the renovated Wilson Real Estate offices, now Carter Wilson Properties. The old photos of Barbara's success story have been replaced with images of genuine achievements, community development projects, affordable housing initiatives, and legitimate business partnerships. Look what came today, David said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Barbara, written from prison. She'd been teaching financial literacy to other inmates, helping them understand how to manage money legally and ethically. People can change, I said softly, remembering the broken woman in the prison visiting room. David wrapped his arms around me, his hand resting on my slightly swollen belly, our secret for just a few more weeks. They can. You taught me that. You taught all of us that. As we stood there, watching the sunset over Hartford, I touched the pearl necklace resting in my desk drawer. Someday I would give it to our daughter, along with a different kind of legacy, one built on truth, integrity, and the courage to face reality, no matter how painful. Barbara Wilson's empire of lies had crumbled, but from its ashes, something genuine had grown. Sometimes I realized the greatest act of love isn't protecting family secrets, it's having the strength to expose them, face them, and heal from them. And as for those business cards Barbara had torn up at her party, I didn't need them anymore. My name was now on the building, a testament not to deception and fraud, but to the power of honesty and redemption.